moving on to China, a lot of attention has come to focus on China's role in Africa. China's obviously becoming a major economic power. China essentially remains a communist country.
Yeah.
And for both these reasons, the West is deeply hostile and suspicious towards China. We in our country also have a campaign called Hands Off China, which is to try and debunk the myths that are spread about China and let the workers of Britain understand their role more clearly. One of the things that we're always aware of is that China, while it pursues development and it needs resources for its economy, it has a very different attitude than the former imperial powers have when they deal with countries. And I wonder if you could tell us about your experience of dealing with China in terms of your economic development and whether that's helped in your country's bid to cement its freedom and get around the sanctions of Western powers.
Relations between ZANU-PF in particular and Zimbabwe in general with China date back to the liberation struggle of Zimbabwe. The Chinese, led by the Communist Party of China, they are progressive people, they are sincere, they do not have double standards like the imperialists do, and when they come with aid, it has no conditionalities. So we have found in the Chinese friends from as way back as probably for more than 40 years now, from as way back as the Zimbabwean struggle for its liberation up to now. Zimbabwe has had relations with the Chinese and diplomatic relations from 1980 to date, which is 30 years now. The Chinese are more sincere, the Chinese are progressive, and the Chinese are anti-imperialists, just like us. So we have better friends in them.
Good. Are there any examples of concrete development projects that you can share with us? Or?
The Chinese have assisted Zimbabwe in the educational sector, health, almost every sector, in infrastructure development as we speak, and in reviving the economy. And they are very sincere, I must say.
Thank you very much for that. We know that the MDC, when it was set up, had political and economic backing from Western imperialism. Certainly there are such organizations as the Westminster Foundation for Democracy. In the United States they have also National Endowment for Democracy and other such organizations who basically have funds which are aimed at political interference and protection of US imperialist interests throughout the world. And they were very much behind setting up of MDC. But clearly there are British business interests which date back a long time, and British capital operates within Zimbabwe in the mining sector, industrial sector, as well as their relations to the white farmers. All of their political attention seems to be focused through the MDC for a long time. I wonder if you can tell us about the current state of the MDC with regards to your coalition government, and secondly, to what extent do you think British imperialism is currently able to interfere in internal affairs, economic and political, in your country?
Well, after the formation of the inclusive government in February 2009, the MDC have continued to show that they are not a Zimbabwean opposition party. You are all aware that the MDC is a British party. The MDC are puppets of the British, and they don't have Zimbabwean people at heart, and they don't stand for Zimbabweans. Even in the inclusive government, they've continued to show those signs. They're not sincere. At some point, they were operating in parallel government, but I must say that the country is still intact as a result of President Mugabe's leadership. No one can shake President Mugabe. The imperialists have failed. Even with the coming on board of the MDC in the inclusive government, President Mugabe is still in charge. I think I should remind you that as we speak in Zimbabwe, there's just one head of state and government, one commander-in-chief of the defense forces, and one executive president in President Mugabe. So the MDC has failed to do anything in Zimbabwe.
And you think that they've been exposed by their actions before the masses of Zimbabwe?
The inclusive government absolutely has managed to expose the MDC, because the MDC president, on the Friday that he was sworn into office, he promised the civil servants that he would give them money on the following Monday. And he has failed to do that, and it's more than a year and a half from that Monday. And so the inclusive government has done well in exposing that the MDC are puppets, the MDC have nothing to offer to Zimbabweans, and the MDC stand for the imperialists.
But for that reason, as the MDC haven't been able to take control of the administrative apparatus in Zimbabwe, do you think that's the reason they've failed to get the backing of imperialists? Because the imperialists promised to lift sanctions in response to the power sharing agreement and Tsvangirai coming into office.
The MDC leader, Morgan Tsvangirai, asked for sanctions against the people of Zimbabwe, and no one who has people at heart will ask for sanctions. Anyone who calls for sanctions on a people is indeed an enemy of the people.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, lastly, just to finish, what do you think is the outlook of the current situation in Zimbabwe?
In terms of what?
In terms of political and economic prospects for the future?
The economy has been doing well. The economy is improving, mainly based on agriculture. You know, after the land reform program was embarked on, the country suffered successive droughts. The region, rather.
That was the whole of Southern Africa.
The whole of Southern Africa, so there's no way the land reform could have done.
Incidentally, on that question, at that time, I understand many states in Southern Africa were dependent on UN World Food Programme aid, which was denied, and we always felt it was being used as a political tool to starve the people of Zimbabwe, to
Correct.
deny them that aid and to associate it with the political struggle of imperialism against your country.
Absolutely. But despite that, the country has managed to remain intact, and like I said, no single person in Zimbabwe between the time the land reform program was embarked on to date has died of hunger.
Comrade Anastancia, thank you very much indeed for meeting with us and taking the time to speak
Thank
to
you.
us.